Uh, I wanna get some new spells. Hold on. What can I sell? Hold on. Do I have anything in the stash? I don't have anything in my stash, right? The stuff I want costs like 3,000 bucks. Equipment. Oh, couldn't I just sell things directly from my stash? So armor 1, armor 3, I can sell those. Let me sell those, sell the drugs, and then just see what spells I can buy. Thinking about this as I was talking to Gobbet. Isabel didn't pay us for her run. Sell items, sell those. I'm gonna sell my gun. I'm gonna sell my gun. Sell my gun, sell the drugs. Keep the medkit and things. Alright, sell. 1,075. Crap. 350. Powerboat 1 is only 100. I mean, I don't want to do that. Powerboat 2, like if I buy this, it sets me back on getting Powerboat 3. Crap. As a boat 2, oh, I can't do that, it's Conjuring. Corp Mage. It's not as good as the armor on my... Flamethrower 2, damage 20. I have Flamethrower 1, right? 12. It's 8 more damage, which is a lot. Blindless... Yeah, no, I can't afford anything, never mind. I need to do a mission where I get paid. Alright, how's our other dudes? Racter. My friend, there is something that I would like to discuss with you. Something related to Ares run that you recently accepted. Oh, he's gonna put the laser on his bot. You may recall my story about my former colleagues, Taylor and Hardingham, the ones who stole my research. They work at that facility. If the auto repair circuits that they took from me still exist, they are there. I need you to bring me on the run to retrieve them. Alright, of course, you'll be the first man on the train when we head out. Thank you, my friend. You will not regret this decision. I guarantee it. Oh, alright. Well, I'll take your guarantee. The air in Racter's shop is ripe with the stench of old metalworking fluids. He turns to face you, a burning cigarette clenched between his teeth. Sorry about the smell. It's long past time to purge the coolant sump. He frowns. If I had access to the proper equipment, this would not be a problem. I could clean the fluid and reuse it. But alas, halogen treatment chambers are rather hard to come by, even in a place like Hioi. He shakes his head as if to clear. Anyway, my friend, you didn't come here to discuss the ins and outs of shop maintenance, I'm sure. So what does bring you here? I've been thinking about what we talked about last time. I never asked you a few questions. He tilts his head in acquiescence. Be my guest. I have no secrets to keep. You have secrets to keep, Racter. About the drone self-repair system that you invented, how did it work? There were 3 distinct elements to my approach. When these elements were all working in concert, prototypes that utilized the process displayed remarkable self-repair capabilities. This may be a lengthy explanation. I can skim over it if you please, or I can break it down for you if you're genuinely interested. Alright, give me the long version. He shifts his cigarette to the corner of his mouth. Very well, the long version it is. The first element of my process was an outer skin that the drone could be wrapped in. A refinement of older biomimetic self-healing materials, modeled to emulate the self-repair capabilities of living beings. Imagine a polymer composite interlaced with microtubules, capillaries if you will. These vessels are capable of delivering bonding agents to the site of a wound as it occurs, thus healing it. I've heard of spark materials that operate on a similar principle, but they've been around for decades, haven't they? Yes, though they remain uncommon until recently. As I said, my material was a refinement on those earlier designs. It was also only the first part of a system. The synergy between the three was what made the project work. The second element involved the underlying structure of the drone's architecture, the servos, gears, circuits, etc. Utilizing self-assembling materials and redundant systems, I created a system by which damaged components could be fabricated and replaced by the drone itself, without any need for human interference. Alright, so you have self-healing skin and self-replacing underlying structure. What was the third part? Finally, the system had a magical component. The corner of his mouth dips downward. I must confess a certain degree of ignorance when it comes to this portion of the project. I understand some of the theory behind what was done, but the specifics are beyond me. I'm surprised. I thought that this was your process through and through. Oh, it is. I was the one who recognized the need for a magical component. But I feel no shame in admitting that I cannot understand the specifics. I have a mind for figures and physics and the natural world. Magic works according to a different set of principles altogether. Truth be told, it makes my head hurt. Okay, so why did you need this third component? You said that was your idea. In layman's terms, a magical element was necessary to render the system self-perpetuating. Obviously, no purely mechanical system can repair itself indefinitely. The synthetic skin becomes more brittle with every wound that it heals, and the automated assembly components will eventually run out of materials to work with. As a rule, fighting against entropy is a losing proposition, unless you take materials from the environment. Anyway. But with magic, we can rewrite the rules, weaken the grasp of those entropic forces to the point that they are rendered negligible. Think of magic as the lubrication that keeps the gears turning. I wish that it wasn't necessary, but I'm also a realist. And I must confess that it is required for the system to work. So basically it's magic. How do you make self-repairing drones? Magic. And this package of systems is what your former colleague stole from you, what you need to get back. Yes, given enough time and resources, I might be able to recreate the first two components of the system on my own. But the magical component is, and will forever be, completely beyond me. Well, why don't you hire a mage? That's why it's so important that we recover my research and the prototype that was stolen. And we will recover them, of that I have no doubt. What do you think that a post-human future would mean? There's a hard limit to the fusion of man and machine. Doesn't your vision of a future require us to get past that? There's a hard limit to the fusion of man and machine. Doesn't your vision of the future require us to get past that? You're speaking of the essence limit, and the problems associated with essence loss. He releases a plume of smoke from the corner of his mouth. Yes, of course, it will be a problem. But as with all problems, a workaround will present itself. Of this I am certain. Are you certain? Are you basing that on anything? Or are you just taking it on faith? What workaround? Essence loss will always be a problem. To deny that would be wishful thinking. Are you basing that on anything, or are you just taking it on faith? He smirks at you. No, my friend, I'm not taking it on faith. My beliefs are rooted in my own observations and experiences. For the time being, let us leave the matter at that. Essence loss. More questions for you, if you don't mind. What do you think that a post-human future would mean? Freedom. He takes a long drag on his cigarette, sucking the smoke deep into his lungs. When he speaks, it erupts from his mouth in a plume. The ultimate freedom to direct our own progress and to steer ourselves as a people in whatever direction we wish. Yeah, except that sometimes you give people too much freedom and they destroy themselves. Because people are dumb. Sometimes. Consider, my friend, every aspect of Koschei was tailor-made for a purpose, dreamed up, designed, and built by a singular guiding architect. Alright, keep going. Now think of the circumstances surrounding your own birth, and the building blocks that shaped you into the man you are today. Your mother and father exchanged fluids, sloppily no doubt, and with all the mindless abandon that such biological imperatives entail. Whoa, man, you leave my parents out of this. That might have been the ugliest description of sex I've ever heard. I don't even want to think about that. I don't. I basically agree with them. Like, why are these all disagreeable? I mean, yeah. I mean, he's right. My parents had sex. I just don't even want to think about that. He raises both hands in a placating gesture. Just an example, my friend, just an example. Substitute in my parents instead, or any other pairing that you choose to imagine, if it makes you more comfortable. The important thing is that the forces that shaped you and me and the others upstairs and anyone else you could care to mention were ultimately mindless ones, blind, manipulative biological devices, manipulative biological drives that led a sperm and an egg to collide. Add in a roll of the dice and a dash of Mendelian genetics, and here you are. Yes, that is indeed genetics. The natural process of evolution and sexual selection guide the development of our species through trial and error. Throw a few billion darts at the wall and see what sticks. In the future that I foresee, this process will be reined in, guided by our own controlling intellects. To co-opt an antiquated phrase, the myth of intelligent design will become reality. But we will be our own gods, reshaping ourselves as we see fit. Tell me again, what does this have to do with posthumanism? Biological evolution is full of choice, Racter. We choose who we mate with. That choice helps to determine the traits that our offspring will inherit. No, that's not actually true, because you don't really have free will. Why do you choose that thing? What makes you attracted? Like, what attracts you to the other person? You don't control your attraction. You don't consciously control your attractions. That stuff is like you're born with that instinct. Let me get this straight. You're a scientist, possibly mad, who's literally telling me that he wants to play God. How cliched is that? I don't want to say any of these things. I want to say to him that when we have the ability to reshape ourselves however we see fit, then whenever we screw up, it'll be entirely our own fault, and we can't blame random chance anymore. It doesn't mean we won't screw up, it just means when we do screw up, it's entirely our own fault, and we can't blame DNA or genetics or randomness. That's what it means. Yeah, no, these are bad responses. Tell me again, what does this have to do with posthumanism? Step back for a moment and imagine a future in which we have fully integrated with machines. Really imagine it. There'll be no niche that we cannot fill. We can guide our own evolution, tailor ourselves to whatever environment we see fit. We will no longer be slaves to the selective processes that have dictated our development since time immemorial. I mean, yeah, I mean, yes, there are some benefits. I do concede that. Because there are limitations to evolution, like the way evolution works, you change a little bit from generation to generation. So there's no way because like you know how we have four limbs, and most animals, from fish, reptiles, mammals, birds, we all have four limbs because at some point in the distant past, we all split off from a common ancestor that has four limbs. And we have reached a point in evolution. I mean, we reached it a long, long time ago. But because we evolved out of a four-limbed creature, it is almost impossible for us to evolve an extra limb. Right? It is close to impossible. Right? There are no six-limbed mammals, or birds, or reptiles, or even fish. Right? So, so evolution can only change you a little bit at a time, for the most part, unless you're really small, really basic. I guess like a new set of animals might evolve out of very primitive creatures. Like maybe if there was some sort of mass extinction, like insects would evolve into something else and they would have six limbs, maybe. Like well, like six legs and two wings, two sets of wings. But there are limits to evolution, is what I'm trying to say. What I'm trying to say is I can't grow an extra pair of limbs naturally. Like humans would not evolve an extra pair of limbs naturally. And the only way for humans to acquire an extra pair of limbs, if we want it, is through technology and medical science or whatever it is. So there are some advantages in that, or like, you know, like surviving in space. There's no way that biology will ever evolve to be spacefaring. Because that's just not how. Right? Like that's not. There's no there's no like what do they call it? Right, like every little mutation has to be advantageous in order for it to be retained. And so you need like a series of steps to get to the final form. But like going into space, there's no incremental benefit to like going halfway into space. In fact, there's no it's hard to see the benefit of actually going into it. Anyway, so there are things that evolution can't do, like space flight or growing extra arms. And so there are benefits to that. On the other hand, it doesn't mean that the things we imagine will be any better than the things that evolution gives us. There's no guarantee that our ideas are good ideas because people have bad ideas all the time. Like people do stupid stuff all the time. And so it's quite possible that like we change ourselves into a form that later on we find out was a bad idea and then we screw ourselves that way. That's also possible. But it's not like evolution is necessarily better either. I mean, evolution can also evolve a creature into a dead end. What's a good example of a dead end evolution? Like, I don't have a good... Like animals that are like too specific and then they lose their habitat or they lose their food source and they can't adapt to a different food source or a different habitat and it just go extinct. That happens all the time, by the way. Anyway, so essentially you want us all to be what? Robots? No, I suspect there must always be some biological component to metahuman life. A degree of randomness, the possibility of mutation, these are good things, and even if we could shed them entirely, I suspect that we shouldn't. Alright. I mean, so he's kind of saying the same thing. What I desire is a truer fusion of man and machine. His eyes flit to Koschei. The drone takes a step forward in response. Modern cybernetic systems tend to be iterations on the biological components that they replace. There are exceptions, of course. There is no analog for the data jack in nature. But on the whole, our imagination has been depressingly limited in this regard. In the future that I foresee, we will abandon this restrictive mentality and open our eyes to newer, more exciting possibilities. Bodies reshaped to thrive in the deep ocean and the depths of space. Bodies inspired by nature or the human imagination, or both. Bodies that can be used and shared and used again, inhabited as their wearers see fit. That sounds cool. You just need to separate the mind from the body, so you can transfer your mind to different bodies. The timely realization of such a future is what drives me forward. It is the cause to which I have devoted my life, and thankfully it is inevitable. He tips his cigarette, sending ash spilling down onto the metal floor, assuming of course that we don't destroy ourselves first. Yeah, that part. Destroying ourselves. Mind if I ask you something else? So this post-human future that you're trying to bring about, what role would a drone like Koschei play? No, he's gonna put himself into Koschei, don't you get it? Bro, isn't it obvious? He's gonna put himself into Koschei. A similar one to the role that he plays now, I imagine. He was designed for a purpose after all. That said, I can see the techniques that went into his design and fabrication having much broader ranging applications. You're pretty attached to that drone of yours, aren't you? You've even assigned it a gender. You keep calling it him. Yes, of course. Koschei is very close to me. As if on cue, the drone scuttles forward, the hardened tips of its claws screeching across the metal floor of the shop. It comes up short just in front of you, a strange mechanical chitter rising from deep within its chassis. This thing is definitely alive. It's either like a dog brain or like a person. You might accuse me of anthropomorphing my little companion, assigning human characteristics to him where in fact there are none. Truth be told, there is much more to Koschei than meets the eye. But that's a different conversation, one best suited to be held for another time. Yeah, no, there's definitely a biological brain there. Possibly human brain. Why? Why not talk about it now? Because I have work to do, and I'm sure that you can find better uses for your time than listening to me prattle on. He gestures towards the hatch in the ceiling, and with that, I'm afraid I must ask you to show yourself out. We can continue our talk at a later time. Alright, we'll talk later. Good night. That's not a pure bot.